I've worked in acute psych care for over 17 years. That means everything from suicidal ideation to full-blown psychosis. You learn to filter the noise, differentiate the delusional from the dangerous, the confused from the manipulative. But there are moments where the clinical training doesn't explain what's in front of you. This was one of those moments. It was a Tuesday morning, quiet, relatively. Census was low, just 12 on the unit. 3 on one-to-one observation, the rest stable enough for group therapy and open day room privileges. I was assigned to the East Wing, 4 rooms, 2 patients each, and my rounds were on schedule. Around 9:15 a.m., our unit clerk flagged me down, said something was off. One of the techs, Brandon, had gone to do a head count and noticed someone was missing, Julia M. Julia was new, day 3 on the unit, 32 years old, admitted involuntarily after a failed suicide attempt. Diagnosis: schizoaffective disorder, bipolar type. She had a history, documented delusions involving surveillance, cameras, and a group she referred to only as the Watchers. But she'd been relatively calm since admission. Meds started 2 nights earlier, and there had been no incidents. Until now. We checked her room, empty. We checked the group room, bathroom, dining area, nowhere. That's when we heard the muffled crying coming from behind the locked staff-only restroom, one that required a keypad code, a code that only staff had, a code that logs entries and exits on the electronic system. I tried the handle, locked. I called out, "Julia, is that you in there?" No response, just soft, uneven sobbing. We called down to security and maintenance. Meanwhile, I pulled up the electronic access logs on the workstation at the nurses' station. No entries, no exits. No code had been entered since 6:04 that morning, nearly 3 hours before we'd even started rounds. No staff had gone in, no one had come out, the lock showed no fault, no override, nothing. As far as the system was concerned, that door hadn't opened since the first med pass. 10 minutes later, maintenance popped the door with the override key. And there she was, Julia, curled up in the far corner of the restroom, wedged between the sink and the wall. Arms around her knees like she was trying to make herself disappear. Her scrubs were damp with sweat, her eyes wild and unfocused. She looked at me like I wasn't real. "They told me to hide," she whispered. "The Watchers, they said you weren't safe anymore, none of you." Her voice was flat, not scared, just certain. I asked her how she got in. She shook her head. "They opened it for me." Now listen, we deal with auditory hallucinations all the time. Patients believe what they hear. We treat it clinically, we don't validate it, but we don't shame it either. But here's the part that still doesn't make sense. Not from a nursing standpoint, not from any standpoint. The keypad lock hadn't malfunctioned. Security footage showed no movement near the door for over 2 hours. The bathroom had no windows, no vents big enough to crawl through, no secondary entrance. No one saw her go in, and no one saw her leave. But there she was. We sedated her, haloperidol and lorazepam combo, and got her to the quiet room for monitoring. She slept for nearly 8 hours straight. When she woke up, she didn't remember the bathroom at all. Didn't remember hiding, didn't remember the Watchers, just kept asking if she'd missed breakfast. We changed the code on that lock, twice. Still, none of us used that restroom alone for weeks after. And I'll be honest with you, this wasn't my first strange incident in psych. But it was the first time I looked at an access log, saw nothing, and still heard someone crying behind a door I couldn't explain. I've charted more delusions than I can count. But what do you do when the data lines up with the delusion? You write your report, you file it with the incident binder, you keep your voice calm during rounds, and you never, ever ignore a patient who says they're being watched. Not after Julia. Hello friends, and thank you so much for tuning in. A special shout out to our incredible subscribers. Your support keeps these creepy, fascinating, and sometimes even comforting stories alive. But here's something to think about. Only about 30% of our viewers are subscribed. If you enjoy our content, hitting that subscribe button helps more than you might realize. It only takes a second, but it makes a world of difference. While you're at it, a like and share go a long way in keeping these eerie tales coming. Thank you again for being part of this journey. You're the reason we're here. See you in the next one, if you dare. Psych nursing isn't what people think it is. It's not all padded rooms or rage fits. It's silence. Long, heavy silences. It's watching, waiting, measuring the invisible. And sometimes it's about learning how to listen to what you're not supposed to hear. This happened back when I worked third shift on a locked psychiatric unit in a state hospital outside of Flagstaff. We had a patient, male, early 40s. We'll call him Marcus. Brought in on a court-ordered psych hold after a violent public disturbance. No known psych history, no drugs in his system, no family to reach. He'd been picked up shouting scripture into traffic, wearing nothing but boxers and a rosary necklace. From the start, he was quiet. Too quiet. Didn't speak unless prompted. Ate when we placed food in front of him, showered when escorted. Completely compliant, but completely disconnected. No emotional affect, no eye contact, no voluntary conversation. And then the screams started. It was my third night working his hallway. I'd just finished final vitals and was logging my notes when it happened. 3:17 a.m. on the dot. It was like something from a war film, raw, animalistic, deep from the diaphragm. 11 seconds. I know that because I checked. I timed it the next night. And the night after that, always 3:17 a.m., always 11 seconds. Always Marcus. But here's the thing, he never remembered it. Ever. The first time it happened, we thought it was night terrors. We rushed in. He was sitting upright in bed, eyes wide open, staring straight ahead. No visible distress, no elevated heart rate, not sweating, breathing normal. He just looked vacant. When I asked him about it the next morning, he blinked like I'd told him someone else had done it. I slept okay, he said. No dreams. We ran sleep studies, normal. We ran labs, normal. Neurologist evaluated him, clean EEG. By the end of the week, we had nursing staff refusing to do rounds near his room unless they were paired. One of the CNAs, an older guy named Dennis who'd done 2 tours in Iraq, started bringing a pocket Bible to work. Said it didn't feel like a scream that came from a man. Said it felt like something was borrowing his voice. I logged everything, documented each scream. 3:17 a.m., 11 seconds. Always the same tone. The same volume, like a recording. But on the 10th night, something changed. I was walking past his room right as it started, and for the first time he wasn't in bed. He was standing, facing the corner, arms limp at his side, screaming toward the wall. When it stopped, he turned slowly, like he was waking up, and said, "Was I loud?" That was the only time he acknowledged it in the moment. Next morning, nothing. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. No change in medication. No change in routine, no intervention, just stopped. His discharge was quiet. 6 weeks later, he walked out. Same blank stare, same silent shuffle. We heard later he moved to a halfway house in Phoenix. But I still check the clock every night I work the floor. 3:17 a.m. Because that scream, I don't care how many charts I've written or how many diagnoses I've memorized, that scream didn't belong to him. It just used his body to get out. No unit is ever fully silent. Even on nights when the halls are calm and meds have done their job, there's always a hum. Air vents, distant voices, the soft shuffle of slippers against tile. But this wasn't background noise. This was something else. It started in South Wing. Patient named Lyle, schizophrenia, early 50s, long-term stay, began whispering during group therapy, just under his breath. You couldn't catch it unless you were close. But a tech caught the end of it one afternoon while handing out journals. "Tag, you're it." Didn't seem strange at first. Could have been anything. Echoes of childhood, random word association. But it didn't stop. Later that evening, another patient, this one in North Wing, different diagnosis entirely, was heard whispering the same thing. "Tag, you're it." Different voice, different tone, same phrase. We thought maybe someone was spreading it around. That happens sometimes. Phrases pick up and echo across units, especially when patients talk during shared rec time or meals. But that wasn't the case here. These patients hadn't been near each other in over a week. Different meds, different observation schedules. Still, by the third night, staff began hearing it more. Always when no staff were in the room, always just low enough to avoid documentation. "Tag, you're it." No giggling, no teasing, not playful, just flat, like they were following instructions. We brought it up in morning huddle. Some laughed, some shrugged. A couple of the senior nurses didn't. The next week I had overnight rotation in East. I made my rounds like usual, standard checks room to room, and in one of the shared rooms I paused. It was subtle, barely audible. "Tag, you're it," came from the far bed. The patient was lying down, eyes open, not moving. I asked who they were talking to, no response. Next day I asked again. He blinked at me. I don't remember saying anything. Another nurse, Jody, reported hearing the same phrase from a female patient in the day room during art therapy. Whispered under her breath as she shaded a figure with no face. We checked chart histories. No shared delusions, no shared trauma, different ages, backgrounds, religions, vocabularies. Still, they all repeated the same thing. "Tag, you're it." And then one night we caught something. One of the hallway cameras glitched, just briefly, in East Wing. When playback was reviewed during a routine audit, there was no visual anomaly, but there was audio. At 3:19 a.m., in a room with only one patient, clearly asleep, came a voice. "Tag, you're it." The voice didn't match the patient's. Too deep, too slow. And when we checked timestamps, no staff had entered that room for nearly an hour. We ran diagnostics, the mic was functional, no history of interference. That's when we stopped laughing about it. We began quietly instructing staff to break up any patient-to-patient whispers that lasted too long. We staggered group time, watched for clusters forming in day rooms, but the game kept going. It didn't matter the wing, didn't matter the time of day. It always came back. "Tag, you're it." One patient, months later, during a lucid moment, looked at me after an unprompted whisper and said, "You should really stop standing in the same spot so long. That's how it finds you." I asked what it was. He smiled faintly. Not my turn to tell. Some phrases you forget. This one I hear every time I walk past a quiet room. Because in psych, repetition means something. And I don't know who started the whisper game. But no one ever claims they were first, only that someone else tagged them. I've worked in psych units long enough to know when someone's putting on a show and when something doesn't fit the manual. We've had screamers, wanderers, shadow stalkers. But this one? This was different. Her name was Erica, 36. Came in under a voluntary hold after multiple reports of her talking to people who weren't there. Her sister brought her in, said she'd stop responding to anyone directly. Wouldn't answer questions, wouldn't even look you in the eye. But put her near a mirror, she'd talk. Now, psychosis takes a lot of forms. Visual hallucinations, auditory, paranoia. But Erica didn't seem scared. She wasn't aggressive. She didn't try to hurt herself or anyone else. She just wouldn't acknowledge the outside world unless she was looking into a reflective surface. Her intake was normal enough. She followed staff directions, ate her meals, took her meds, but she wouldn't speak during assessments. Not a word. Not even a blink of acknowledgement. She just stared, calm, alert, blank. But we started noticing she'd spend increasing amounts of time in the unit bathroom, standing at the sink mirror. We'd find her in there for 20-30 minutes at a time, whispering softly. One of the night shift nurses thought she was praying. But when we checked closer, it wasn't prayer, it was conversation. Full sentences, pauses like she was listening, nods, frowns, laughter, only in front of mirrors. We tested it. Took away her mirror access for a day, covered the one in her room, posted a tech by the bathroom. That day, total silence. She just sat on her bed and stared at the blank wall. Not distressed, just still. That night, she used her meal tray, held it up at an angle to catch her reflection in the window, and as soon as she saw herself, the murmuring started again. Same pattern. We finally asked her gently who she was talking to. I'll never forget what she said. Still staring at her reflection, she whispered, "Her name's Elsie, but she's not me." She didn't blink, didn't smile. "She's trying to teach me how to leave," Erica added. "Leave where?" I asked. Her eyes shifted just slightly toward my reflection, not me directly. "She says you wouldn't understand." We documented everything, brought in psych consults, meds were adjusted, antipsychotics, nothing changed. Erica wasn't deteriorating, she wasn't improving either, just stable, as long as she could see a mirror. We had a weekend float nurse, someone new, try to cover the mirrors again. She thought it was reinforcing the behavior. That night, Erica broke off a piece of her bed frame and polished it against the floor until it had enough of a sheen to reflect her face. She stared into it for over an hour. On discharge day, we had her sign paperwork. She wouldn't look at the doctor, wouldn't look at the forms, but she positioned her chair so she could see the reflective surface of a wall clock behind her. She signed without hesitation. As she was leaving, she walked past a hallway mirror, paused, smiled, whispered something we didn't catch. The mirror fogged up slightly as she spoke. We checked. The AC wasn't running, the hallway wasn't humid, no steam, no temp shift, but the glass fogged. Just for a second, and then cleared. I've charted hundreds of hallucinations, seen delusions that mimic reality down to the breath. But Erica, I still don't know what to make of her. She wasn't afraid, she wasn't confused, she was speaking to someone in the mirror. And whoever it was, they always answered. Thank you so much for watching and being part of this growing community. Your support means the world to us, and it's what keeps these creepy, fascinating, and sometimes comforting stories alive. We'd love to hear from you. If you've experienced something eerie, unexplained, or deeply moving, feel free to share your own story in the comments below. You never know, your story might be the next one featured. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to help keep the chills coming. We couldn't do this without you. See you in the next one.